Hi, this is day 7, the day 7 question. Okay. In what situations do I locate the cause of my distress internally when it may be arising relationally or systematically? In what situations do I locate the cause of my distress internally when it may be arising relationally or systematically? Oh my God, this one's hard. Okay, I'm going to pause for 2 seconds. Okay, it's just gone a second because I thought of something that happened this morning at the gym, but this question is still confusing to me because when I think about internal distress, like if I locate the cause of my distress being an internal cause versus it arising relationally, like if in the presence of another person, or systematically, what does that mean? Does it mean like socially, like at large, like the ideas of like a system, politics, like so when I was in the gym this morning, I uh I felt a little bit of distress arising, and it could have been two different things. One, I was sitting in the sauna after exercising and swimming and stuff, and there was this woman in there who I've been in her vicinity for the last month or two while I've been taking aqua aerobics, and she's been in the locker room. So I just pick up. I haven't really talked to her much other than good morning, have a good day, but I hear her conversations, and they tend toward the negative, like a negative outlook, judgments, the whole thing. And I'm like, well, whatever. Maybe it's not like I'll have my good mornings, and we'll just keep it at that, because I don't like to engage in politics or any of that. And it seemed like she tended toward the political discussions or negative judgments or like just comments that I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound like you're very happy. So, like, even the other day, I was like, oh, I forget what I said, but it was like, what was it? It was the new year, and I had seen her in the pool, and she like get to work on her mobility, I guess, and stuff because she uses some helper like cane type things, and I was like, uh, saying something about enjoying the pool, and she was like, "Yeah, my daughter makes me do it because she wants to spend time with me before I die." I mean, I've never met this person other than a good morning once in a while. So I was like, oh, man, people are carrying a lot of stuff, right? So my heart just goes out to her. Well, I'm sitting in the sauna today, and this is like confessional time. So there were like 3 men and us 2 women. Me and the other woman I was just talking about. I go in, and the men are already talking. And then they were kind of on their way out. They had spent enough time in there to say our goodbyes. But their conversation was one of like, one was on like the city council or an alderman or something. And he was talking about all the good things he was trying to get done, and nobody would listen to him and their good ideas. And then somebody else had the same idea later that they once poo-pooed. And he was like, but that was my idea. And it was just like, I think because I've been working on ego stuff those last year, especially with A Course in Miracles, now it's like every conversation, that's what jumps out to me. Like the ego wanting to say like, validate me, I'm worthy of validation. But yes, we all are, aren't we? And I have stuff coming out of my mouth. I'm wondering like, well, that was very like egocentric. But anyway, so the men leave, and she and I are just quiet because I don't care for small talk. I'd rather just throw out a weird question and see how somebody responds. But I was just waiting to see if she would want to engage me in anything before I start, just to see what her mood was. And she, without looking at me, she goes, what'd she say? Them old goats always trying to fix the world. Like talking about the middle-aged men who had just left, and I just busted out laughing. I was just so unexpected. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was just like, what did I say? I said something like, yeah, I think as I get older, I value listening more than talking. Said something like that. And she goes, yeah, because she's like probably a half a generation older than me. I don't know, really. Um, and so, uh, yeah, that got us off talking. But then she went straight into politics and she said, I'm a Trumpster and my daughter's not, or oh, and my husband's a Democrat, and he's like, she's like, we just can't say anything at home, and then she started talking about immigrants. She was just spouting the like Fox News rhetoric, and so I wanted to enjoy more sauna time. I didn't want to just say, peace out, lady. I need peace. So every comment she made, I found it a fun game to just bring in some sort of what I felt to be, now this is all ego too, a measured response, like center of the road, measured, grounded. That's what I felt, but who knows? In her mind, it was probably wackadoo. And so I started talking about, we have some Mexican restaurants in town. This is story time. This might be a long one. And she was talking about how she loves to go to the Mexican restaurants, and she wanted to try to learn Spanish so she could tell if they were talking about her. So that gives you an idea. Like, that's the only reason you want to learn another language, is to see what other people might be saying about it. Because she's like, they might be saying, you fat pig, eat less cheese. That's what she said. I'm like, oh my God, this stuff going on in her mind. I just wanted to take deep breaths for her. Like, the world it can be a beautiful place. So, then she started going off on immigrants, like the whole rhetoric, and so I sort of said, well, in my lived experience, I said, blah blah blah, I did some bartending. I said a lot of the kitchen workers from the Mexican restaurants would come in after their shift, and I would get to know them, and they would teach me some Spanish, and I would teach them some English. And I said, actually, most of them are trying to learn English. It's like one of the hardest languages to learn. I used to teach English as a foreign language. I was telling her about my lived experience versus like what I'm listening to or reading online. And so just to sort of ground it in like, not everyone's like this, and not everywhere, and like measured. Anyway, that's just what I felt I wanted in this situation. So I was like, and they are paying taxes. They are trying to earn a living here. They are sending money back home to their families. How do they even make it work? I don't know, but it seems like a really challenging thing to do. And I said, I've lived overseas, and I would want, like, in that moment when I lived overseas, I just wanted to feel welcome, because I was having a job, paying taxes, shopping, sharing kindnesses, because I'm just like, I'm new, please help me, So I was just like, didn't know the language, but I was trying. I see that in all of my interactions with people who may not look like they're from here. I see that in every single one of them, but she doesn't. And so I'm like, but she also wasn't saying in her lived experience. She was saying what the news was telling her. So I don't know if she appreciated that, but I wasn't saying it as like, you should be like this. It wasn't about that. It was like just trying to like ground all of this into real lived experience. And so I'm like, maybe it's not everyone, but at least in my experience, those are the people I've met, and they share their stories because I'm like, I just tried to make them feel welcome because I've been in their shoes, and I just wanted to feel welcome, and God. So anyway, this what made me laugh about this question is like, after a lot of this conversation, and I realized I had stayed in there longer than I usually do in the sauna, and I was getting real hot, and she was like in the middle of some other topic, and I just had to stand up because I was feeling really queasy all of a sudden. And I was like, oh, because at first when I felt the queasiness coming on, I was like, is this the conversation? Have I just absorbed too many negative vibes? Or is this the sauna? And I'm like, I'm going to assume it's the sauna. And I left. I said a pleasant goodbye, and I said, I don't know why I said this, but today's weird. she and I, again, we're still the only ones in there. And so as I was opening the door to leave and she was staying, I said, keep up the good fight. I don't know why I said that. Like, she's obviously in a fight. She's in a war with somebody. I don't know. And I don't know if necessarily think in terms of good or bad, but I just chose to use the word good, like keep up the good fight. Because in her mind it seemed like she was like trying to spread the good word, like the good point of view, the right, not good, the right point of view. So I was like, keep up the good fight. I just smiled and left. So, and I said, see you around. So she'll probably, whatever she thinks is what she thinks. I'm past that point in my life where I care, where it affects me at all, like literally at all. And I'm so grateful for that, or else I would have had a much different response to every single thing she was saying. Because I know my old self, and I would have been like highly at unease, and I would have just not shared any opinions at all or viewpoints, and I just would have sort of like catered to her narrative until I could just make an exit. So I've changed it a little. I don't know if it's good or bad, but it sure entertained me, and tried to. And she did say one thing that sort of, she said something about, well, I don't know if my intentions are all that good, but here's blah 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 blah. She sort of like softened something about her tone after we'd been talking a while, and part of me was like, oh, I saw the little ray of hope and sunshine. And I love that when I see that a lot in people, like when we've been talking, and if there's just a little softening, I feel like, oh, yes, there's hope, and because I feel very hopeful about humanity. So this is a long one. I'm so sorry. I decided to tell you that funny, well, to me it was funny story today. And so, in what situations do I locate the cause of my distress internally when it may be arising relationally or systematically? I had a moment there where I questioned my internal distress as like, is this relational, or is this an internal, like environmental or systematic one? And then I was like, okay, yeah, let's stay grounded. This is the sauna. Even though sometimes having those conversations, that it's just like when somebody's bringing so much negativity, so much judgment, so much like, and underneath that I recognize they're just wounded, they're just hurt, they just need to be seen and heard, and maybe held. I don't know, but they're obviously dealing with stuff that shades, clouds their perspective to one of, not cloud, but it just shifts the tone of their perspective to the negative. Whereas maybe I'm just as delusional and mine's shifted toward the positive on average. I'm not saying mine's better, but my heart does go out to them, because it, I don't know, when I try to again be measured about viewpoints, I'm like, maybe mine's delusional and it's not healthy. So I'm like, but I sure enjoy being joyful and happy and kind, and I still get moody, and then I try not to infect other people with that, but I still try to have real conversations about the moodiness, like, hey, we're all in this together, but I don't try to infect people with it. Now that's just the journey I'm on. Next week I may come to some greater understanding of what this is all about. But anyway, this whole in what situations do I locate the cause of my distress internally or relationally? In the past, a lot of times I would locate it relationally in some ways, like projecting outward, like saying that's a problem, when I should have been locating it internally and saying these are just nervous system sensations that I can ride the wave of without letting the mind take hold, like we talked yesterday, and like projecting outward and saying everything's a problem, I'm under threat, when it's like, wait, just breathe, or whatever practice, and just say, I'm okay, there's nothing wrong here. And then sometimes I feel like I've done it the other way, where I might take things too personally and I locate the distress internally, like I'm the problem, there's a problem in here, when it's really like, wait a minute, I'm just in a really overstimulating situation right now. Like, I'm outside of my comfort zone to the extreme, perhaps, or, it could be something relationally, or like very like overstimulating, but I take it personally, like, oh, the problem is inside, all this distress inside, when it's really like, no, there's just a lot of like chaotic noise, lights, sound, whatever around. So these days I try my hardest to really question. I love questions now versus like jumping to a conclusion. And so I really try to question, am I the problem? Is there a problem at all? Even the other person this morning, she's not the problem. I just sent her love and a smile and just thought, but the part of the ego that still gets me is me trying to my brain will still try to, like you've heard me say in this video, make excuses for for things that I don't prefer. So for example, I say, well, she tends toward the negative. That's a judgment of my mind, right? It's something I don't prefer. So I don't prefer to be around that because it tends to sway me toward the negative. I don't like that. So again, those are just ego preferences, right? So I try to check myself and say, there's no problem. She can be how she is, and I can be how I am, and we can sit there and have a conversation. Like she even said, and I so appreciated this. She's like, remember when she said, I remember a time when you could debate and still be friends. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I miss those times. Like we totally connected on like some very really felt things. And none of this was small talk. Some of the politics stuff I consider small talk. It's like the smallest form of small talk of like, well, yuck. But it was framed in a way where it felt like we were trying to reach each other. I don't know. So anyway, such good stuff today. But my ego, I have to check myself because my judgments of like, oh, there's a problem here. And if she only saw it the way I see it, she'd be much happier. And that's like, come on. No, she doesn't need to see anything differently. I don't need to see anything differently. She's on her journey. I'm on mine. And I have been negative and I have been elevated. And my personal journey, I was reflecting on this after our interaction. Me personally, and I've gone back through my journals and read about this enough times before I threw the journals away every time, where I'm like, I vacillated between extremes so often in my life. Because of this, let's anchor it back to this. The distress I was feeling, I always felt like it was extremes, running away from something, running towards something, seeking peak experiences, needing novelty in my life, whatever. I was just always like one extreme to the other. Total freeze mode or total flight mode, like if you want to frame it in nervous system language. I just total stagnancy or like do, go, go. Look how productive I am, And over the years, like my personal journey, I feel like some days is just coming to one of equanimity. And it's happening finally, little by little by little by little. Just sort of like where it was like this, then it's sort of like this, then it's sort of like this. And then sometimes like, but it still fluctuates. But that's my journey. What's her journey? I have no idea how she would characterize it. Maybe because she used to be a staunch, she says, Democrat, and now she's seen the light. So maybe this is the end of her journey and she achieved what she set out to do. If she's framing things in politics, right? I still go back to it's how we frame things. Even this whole like internally versus relationally. Sometimes I find it hard to figure out where that line is, or if there even is a line. Is there even a line? Are these words even useful? Because I feel like everything's relational and to some degree, either relational with others and relational with ourselves. Internal is external. What's the difference? In certain dimensions, like if you want, it depends how you frame things. Everything comes down to how you frame things. And so that's why I felt like this was hard for me, but I tried to give you a few examples and and a silly story. So sorry for the long-windedness. Sorry, not sorry. Bye.